everybody. Welcome back to the Creepy Cascadia podcast. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Sammy, and I'm joined here by my slightly soggy co host, Adam.
I was like, thought you were gonna say something about me being wet. Yeah, for sure. Cause I golfed today and just got drenched. It was
Like torrential downpour when I was driving home from work, and I thought, ooh, Adam's out golfing in this. I hope it's not soaking him right now. Because I'm not sure exactly even where the golf course is. So I was like, maybe it's missing him.
no,
You did
no.
send me a picture of you looking like a drowned rat.
Came home feeling like a drowned rat,
Yeah.
and then it was funny. It was like kind of nice-ish. I putted around. I practiced putted.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm not gonna hit any balls. And then I was like, I'm gonna go in and use the bathroom before my round starts. I go in, I come out. It's freaking pouring. Like I didn't even think it was gonna rain because I did not like. There's kind of like a little. I had a cart. I had already put all my stuff in the cart. I had parked the cart right next to the clubhouse, but I had not like moved down the rain hood over my clubs. So I sat there under the awning with the people that I was playing with, just watching my cart get like soaked. Like, and they were like, "Oh, it'll lighten up soon." No,
No, it didn't.
it did not.
So yeah, you had to just watch your shit get all soaked.
I just watched it get rained on. I even made a joke to the guys. I was like, "So everyone shot their scores. We'll just very like, like, it won't be obvious that we all shot like, it was basically like let's grease the scorecards, fib it." Except by that point, all of us had already paid.
Oh.
So, these people I golf with are like hardcore. Like, I would have been like, peace, let's go. Like, we all agreed to it, right?
Just donated.
You know? And then it was like, they're like, all right, let's go out. It'll clear up. It'll clear up. And then it was like,
My nuts, they will.
six holes that just poured on us. We only played 9. Like, 2/3 of the holes, we just got so. It was like, oh man, it was actually weird because it was like third or fourth hole, it got sunny, but it was still just coming down. We had rainbows. Like, we.
Did you follow it and find a pot of gold so I can retire and quit my job?
Almost, literally. So, standing at the tee box, looking out over the hole, rainbow went from left side of the fairway to the right side of the fairway.
Oh,
you could
really?
see the entire rainbow. like that's how weirdly like the rain plus the sun was like, it wasn't like far away off in the sky. It was like we were like hitting our golf balls through the rainbow.
That should count for something, right?
Yeah. I was like, get the gold. Where's the gold? Like, we were all joking about it, looking for it. Yeah. It was pretty interesting. But yeah, it was crazy. It was like the first couple of holes, it was like miserable, and then like the sun came out, but it was still raining on us, and we're just like, fuck. Like, we were like, I thought when it got sunny we would be fine.
Yeah, no.
No. Like, it somehow was like the sun was directly over us, and the rain just like went from like coming down straight to like going at a slant so it could hit us. like that's how it felt. Like,
We saw all kinds of rain.
yeah.
Big fat drops.
We even got rain that hit you from the bottom.
That came up from the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. We were just like, oh, it was rough. Yeah, we were so like, I had to like, I basically walked in the door and did like the little kid, like, just started stripping, tearing off all my clothes, because it's like, you don't want to drag it in. Did good. I shot 2 under my handicap, so I scored like 20 points, and then I won my match. So I got 24 points for my team.
Sweet.
It's pretty good. You're normally supposed to shoot your handicap, get 18 points, and then it's like a toss-up on how the other person does. So,
nice.
like, if you tie, it's 2 points each. So, like, theoretically, if everybody shot their handicap, it'd be 20 points for each team per person. But I crushed it. So.
Well, you're gonna crush it later.
Well, the problem is my knee's been acting up. So, like, when I go out there,
Must have been when you knew that rain was coming.
It really was. What wasn't it yesterday? I was
We were
just
talking. We were
making
just
fun of
no.
that.
It was when we were driving down to my hometown. We were talking about how like we were feeling achy or whatever, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, maybe it wasn't when we were driving, but we were talking.
was driving. I don't
We
know if it was there or
literally were
back.
just talking about how you're
Yeah.
like sometimes I feel so old, and it's like I don't want to be that person, but it's like oh my knees are aching, the rain's coming.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, saying that, I actually, my two little toes that are all like really jacked up because I broke them and they're all crooked and short. When it gets really cold, like I can feel it in my toe. Like I'm sure I have arthritis in those toes because I
Oh.
didn't ever get them fixed, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so they're all fucked up. But I can like, when it gets really cold outside, it's like, oh, I can feel my fucking arthritis is acting up.
That's a thing.
It really
That's
is.
absolutely a thing. People with arthritis, like, yeah. They're like, oh, it's cold out. And it's like, what? What are you talking about?
Cold weather's coming.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, speaking of coming, your parents are coming out. That is not the direction you thought I was going to go, was it? Because I saw you look at me and give me that look like,
I gave you the look because the next few words out of your mouth were my parents. So I was like,
Yeah, your parents. I'm excited. Adam's parents are coming out to stay with us for almost a week.
almost a week. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't been out for a few years, and it's going to be fun.
I don't know if it was gonna make the podcast, but you asked my mom what like groceries she would want,
Yeah.
and she said muffin bread, and we were like, what the fuck is muffin
Well,
bread?
I was thinking like that must be like a Midwest thing. I'm going to have to ask you. And then you're like, I don't know what muffin bread is.
I was like, do you mean English muffins, Mom? Like I was straight up like, I like muffin bread, you know?
Well, then I was thinking maybe she wants some like sweet bread, like like
Right.
blueberry loaf or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Nope.
But then she totally said, she was like, it's a loaf of bread that's basically English muffin. So it's got to be almost like a sourdough
That's what
or
I'm
some
thinking.
kind of.
I've never seen that at our grocery store.
I mean, to be fair, we usually buy like we don't buy just like regular white bread or just regular wheat bread. Like we usually buy something like different.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've ever bought like muffin bread, or I don't know if I've ever seen it. Like I don't
know.
I was like, maybe it's a Sara Lee thing. Maybe it's like
Maybe.
because the bread aisle is broken up. Like we go to the provider that we like,
Yeah.
and we don't go to the others.
No, we don't.
You know,
Yeah. It's fair.
and it's like roughly half an aisle. So
Maybe Fred Meyer will have it. They have some like off the wall things sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean we got Winco, Safeway, Fred Meyer. We got many grocery stores we can check out.
Target, Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I don't.
I just
Trader Joe's may or may not.
They might. They might have a Trader
They're
Joe
like-
version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's their thing, right? Everything's Trader Joe brand at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
So,
Who was Trader Joe? I want to know. Where
Got
did
rich,
you go,
though.
Trader Joe? Where did you
Is that-
come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Mr. Trader Joe?
little loopy, are we?
Yep.
Did you have to pop a gummy?
No.
Okay.
No.
The
It's been a day.
yeah. I say, isn't it normally Joe DiMaggio? Isn't that the line?
Is that where did you go, Joe DiMaggio?
DiMaggio.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Sure.
Yeah, it's Joe DiMaggio. Yeah.
Was that from The Graduate?
Was it?
I don't know. The only reason I'm assuming that is
Beatles.
because on the holiday, Jack Black and Kate Winslet are at the video store and Dustin Hoffman's there, and he's like, "Where did you go, Joe DiMaggio?" And Dustin Hoffman's like, "I can't go anywhere." I don't know why I assumed it was The Graduate, but
No, it's probably fair. Yeah, if it is The Graduate, I could say The Graduate had some really good music, right? Like it had like The Sound of Silence by like Simon and Garfunkel or whatever.
I've never seen that movie.
It's
I know what it's about.
you know, Old School. Oh, but you know the song, right? Like so in Old School when Blue dies,
Oh,
and it's like I close my eyes,
Baby, that's an
only
Eagles
for a
song.
moment, and the moment's gone.
Maybe it's just Don Henley, but
Maybe that's not the right
Dust in
song.
the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Dust in the Wind is different than Sound of Silence. So those are two different songs.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm trying to think if maybe the Sound of Silence is the one where Will Ferrell gets tranked and falls in the pool, and then he like kind of drowns and he sees his wife or whatever, and
Yeah.
then and then he's Frenching his wife in his dream, and Sean Scott's like, "This you just fucking kiss me," like.
I was like, "You got a dog in your neck."
It's so classic. You're funny. I like you. You're funny. What? Like reaches for his neck. So yeah, I don't. Yeah. So we were talking about our days. You had a rough day. Just tough Monday.
Yeah.
I think you were looking forward to teleworking tomorrow so you could be home.
Yep.
And now you have to go in.
Yep. I have to.
That kind of sucks.
Have to put on makeup and shower before I go to work, and look presentable. I'll tell you what. I love telecommuting because I love a good lunchtime shower.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, Thursday when my folks get here. You're gonna be teleworking that day.
Yeah. I'm gonna shower before they come. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I was like, what? We'll have to talk to them and make sure they won't get here before lunch.
Why are you planning on sneaking home and giving me a nooner or something?
No, I'm just saying, I want you in the shower when they try to come show up when they show up.
Well, they couldn't get in anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Well, yeah, so we are back this week with our part 2 of the Benoit family tragedy. Before we get started, we do want to say with Adam's family coming next week, we are going to be dark next week. So no new episode, but we will be back with something really good for you guys the week after.
We're breaking the streak. My parents are breaking the streak.
Yep.
How dare they?
I know. I was trying to like figure out how I could like research another episode, but we've just been so busy and like gone. And then we got to get the house ready for them to come. We've got our upstairs bathrooms torn apart right now, so we have to get that fixed before they come. So, we are going to be dark next week. So we're gonna skip a week because we are not gonna stress ourselves out with the family coming anymore. So
I'm down. I'm down. It's a little sad to me to break the streak. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was probably going to happen eventually.
Well, we missed one for Thanksgiving.
Did we?
We did.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, no new episode. We didn't do an episode in Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because, we still both have full-time jobs, and it, lives outside of this. And not that we're not stopping at all by any means. We just are, I know that I'm going to get stressed if I try to research another episode and record another episode this week before his parents get here. And
yeah, it's not going to happen before they get here. We would have to do it while they're here.
And our recording setup is also the spare room, so I'm pretty sure they don't want us kicking him out while we try to record. And we also have to take the stuff down because there's, not a ton of room in this bedroom, so we can't have our little panels up with them here. So
yeah, that's more it. They're gonna be gone, out of the room anyway during the day if we were to record.
Yeah.
But you're right, tearing down, setting up.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So we're giving ourselves a little grace.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a Patreon yet. Nobody's paying for anything, so we don't feel too bad letting people down.
Yeah.
I know it's going to bug me all week, but I know it's also for the best right now because we just don't have the time to do another episode.
Yeah.
And enjoy the time with your parents because they're only here for, 6 days, so we want to make the most of the time that they are here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, like I said, we're, if you haven't listened to part 1, please make sure you go back and listen to it. Otherwise, this is probably going to be very disjointed.
Do you got a recap all written, or do you want me to try to recap?
I'm going to let you recap because I don't have one.
Okay.
So, let's hear your recap because you are the wrestling expert in the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last episode you got to see a lot of my wrestling knowledge and
You
stuff.
did.
And,
I was surprised. And you weren't even talking about it like I feel like it excited you. This episode excited you because we were even like talking about wrestling after we stopped recording, and like when we would go to bed, when we went down to bed, we would still be talking about wrestling, and I had a dream about wrestling.
naked wrestling,
No, it was just wrestling.
mud wrestling,
I think that's your dream.
KY jelly wrestling.
Throwback to old school.
Yep, another old school reference. One of my faves.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, talking about wrestling, we talked about Chris Benoit and little Winnie with her cries.
Beat it, Winnie.
I forget her name.
Nancy Benoit.
Nancy Benoit. I remember the woman. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And when you posted the pictures to the old episode, I was like, yep. Like,
I used to jerk it to her.
no, that's no.
God, you go, fucker.
I don't even remember her like from when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, I think it's the WWF, WCW, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, oh yeah, the big hair, the like all red costume, like the nice dress, definitely like.
She was super pretty, like so cute, very adorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, like that's, you know, like I want to say wrestling women tend to be decently good looking.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
Yeah.
Anybody that's really in like the public eye, you know, because
professionally, like as a full-time job.
Yeah,
right?
the patriarchy does love a very attractive woman, so
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
That's why I do a podcast. I have a face made for radio.
Video killed the radio star. No.
All right, go ahead with your recap.
But yeah, so she was originally married to a different guy, a different wrestler, and if I remember right, they were tag team partners, or they were close to each other, and there was a storyline about how Chris Benoit was like having an affair, or like having a closer relationship with Nancy than her ex-husband.
Yes, there was a storyline. They were not partners. Kevin Sullivan, who was Nancy's ex-husband, and Chris were not partners. They were just like opponents.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so they were opponents, and like
he wrote the storyline that basically they joked her out that he wrote his own divorce.
Yeah. The ex-husband wrote the storyline that like she was more in with him. Right. I believe there was some alleged or confirmed domestic abuse stuff. And so Kevin wrote the storyline. Him and Nancy got divorced. Her and Chris got together. They started, what do I want to say, like wrestling, kind of together, like being together in the shows ish. And then they had a couple of kids. One kid. Yes, because we talked about him.
He had 2 kids from a previous marriage.
That's what it is.
And
okay, because I was like, I thought there were 2 boys that wanted to follow in his footsteps.
Yes, so they had a Chris had a son and a daughter from a previous marriage, and then together they had Daniel.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then, I know we talked about he was very close to Eddie Guerrero.
Yep.
And I think we ended the episode when Eddie died.
Correct.
And Chris took it pretty hard.
Yes. Yep.
And so, kind of, I believe we were already talking a little bit about Chris Benoit spiraling a bit, like him and Nancy had some troubles. And so, yeah, from what I recall, we stopped it at that time frame. We haven't gotten into the tragedy of the Benoit family really yet about what happened.
Yeah,
but that's gonna be today's episode.
Yes.
And then there were lots of anecdotes about random wrestlers and stories that I had from my childhood growing up.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We ended last episode, we were talking about the decline in Chris's mental state. It was pretty apparent to most people who knew him that he wasn't in a good place by any means.
Yeah.
So Nancy actually spoke to some friends about Chris and how they had been fighting, but she wasn't even sure why they were fighting. Like it was there wasn't even a reason. Like it was just I think he was irritable, he was short fused from the sounds of it. So it was really just his 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 grief over the loss of his friend, his use of steroids. It was just a big recipe for disaster, you know.
Yeah.
Everything probably pissed him off, which I feel like that was me today. I kind of understand. um and as a means of coping, they actually got Chris a journal to start writing in,
Okay.
and he actually used it as like he would write letters to Eddie in this journal as like a way to cope. And for a while it actually seemed like that helped his mood, but sadly it was a short-term fix.
Okay.
So again, we just want to give a quick trigger warning for this episode. There is talk of suicide, child death, and murder, you know. So if any of those are triggering, and we will get back into, there were allegations of domestic abuse between Chris and Nancy. So
Okay.
anything like that, if that is any in any way triggering for you, feel free to skip ahead because we don't want this to be something that's going to stress you out. So on June 25th, 2007, WWE called into the police in Fayetteville, Georgia for a wellness check. Chris was actually scheduled for an event in Houston, but he hadn't shown up and no one had heard from him, which was unusual. He was a workaholic. Like, he did not miss, you know, he said he left right after Eddie's funeral to go to Europe for an event. So for him to not show up, it was odd, and it started to worry people.
Hmm.
The police showed up at the Benoit home and they were greeted by a neighbor. So, after a brief discussion, police asked the neighbor to take the dogs because there were a couple of dogs that were in the home so they could check the house and make sure, you know, do their wellness check.
Yeah.
And this neighbor actually hadn't seen anybody in a few days either, it sounds like she had told the police.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, according to the documentary, the neighbor entered the home to get the dogs and then came running out after discovering the body of Daniel, their son.
Ooh. Okay.
Police immediately entered the home and first found Daniel. He was face down in his bed and he was very clearly deceased.
Hmm.
Then they continued to check the home and found Nancy, also deceased. Nancy had been bound with duct tape and was found in her office. In the basement of the home, the body of Chris was found from an apparent hanging. Nancy was found with bruising on her back, which is believed to have been caused by Chris holding her down, like with his knee in her back.
Hmm.
Daniel is believed to have been given either Xanax or some other drugs to put him out prior to being asphyxiated by his father. So both Nancy and Daniel's bodies were found with Bibles next to them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
As police started the investigation, the details were unknown. All the public knew at this point was that Chris, Nancy, and Daniel were dead. And these deaths shocked not only the community, but the entire wrestling world. And at first, because the circumstances of the death were unknown, WWE actually aired a 3-hour tribute the day the bodies were found to Chris. Which, again, at this point, they didn't know the circumstances of these deaths. They just knew one of their own had, you know, a wrestling family had died.
Yeah.
After more details came out, fans and the public were horrified to learn that Chris actually murdered his wife and son and then took his own life. As you can imagine, the WWE was probably horrified that one of their own was actually responsible for such an awful tragedy, and they had created a tribute that glorified his life and his career in wrestling.
They had already aired it?
They had already aired it.
Yeah.
And now we're talking back in the days of, like, this is 2007, so people are still recording shit on their VCRs, right?
Yeah. Potentially. Yeah.
DVD's probably a thing, but
DVDs are a thing by then.
yeah.
some people still have VCRs. You know, you didn't really record on your DVD. DVR was maybe like a newer thing.
Yeah.
I wanna
TiVo,
say.
remember TiVo?
TiVo, yeah, TiVo.
TiVo might have been a thing. So
Yeah.
it's not like on the internet where you can try to like get stuff back, take it down immediately. Like it was out there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't good. And people were really, I mean, I'm sure that there was like a big outcry, like that they had done that. But again, they didn't know at the time, and they were just as upset about the family being killed or dying. They again, they
Yeah.
didn't even know that they were like murdered. They just knew that they had died. Like they could have been in an accident. There were so little details out that they knew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it, right? So if you think about it, it's let's say that so they don't know the details.
Mm-hmm.
They know somebody died. I think we covered that like they put on like 2 or 3 shows a week, like some of these companies.
Yeah.
So like you're putting out content on a consistent basis. Like you hear the bad news. Your wrestlers are maybe hard hit. They don't want to wrestle, like they don't want to perform that night.
Yeah.
So you cobble together clips. You can do it pretty quickly,
Oh yeah.
and then you cut a show and you air it
Mm-hmm.
instead of running one of your shows. You know, so I mean, I honestly don't blame them for like, because I mean, it's like how many shows do you need to run before you do a tribute? You know,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, yeah, knowing what we know now,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit in poor taste,
You know, and
but
there are some schools of thought and some weird things that maybe they had it ready to go already, you know? So, but
mm,
we're going to talk about that.
oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we launched into like the death stuff real quickly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm interested to hear what else you got like surrounding this. I think in the first episode I alluded to like maybe some reasons why. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna go into like.
We're going to go into it.
Okay.
I already know what you're going to say, and we're going to go
Yeah.
into it.
Okay. Perfect.
So, as more details emerged, the public learned exactly how terrible these deaths were. It is believed that Nancy was killed the Friday night before the bodies were discovered. After killing Nancy, Chris actually went to bed and then woke up Saturday morning and killed Daniel. They did find like needle marks in his arm, so they believe he injected him with either Xanax or some type of sedative
Mm,
to
okay.
basically knock him out while he asphyxiated him.
Yeah.
Throughout the weekend, Chris had contacted Chavo Guerrero, who was actually Eddie's nephew, that was another wrestler that he worked with. He was supposed to meet up with him for an event over the weekend, but he bailed on this Saturday event. He told Chavo that Nancy and Daniel had food poisoning and they were really, really sick. He then sent a series of strange texts to Chavo where telling him where his dogs were, his address, and how he could get into the house, which is now believed that he wanted the bodies to be found quickly after he took his own life, which I believe was Sunday morning
Okay.
or Saturday evening. That media was quick to blame roid rage as the reason that Chris had snapped and murdered his family. However, at this point, the autopsies had yet to be completed. The press took that line because, you know, it's a pro wrestler. He's buff. He's kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
it's just the assumption. But sadly, after a toxicology report was completed, it was found that Chris had high levels, extremely high levels of testosterone in his system. Even though it was supposedly tested for through the wellness program that we talked about last time. So WWE had this wellness program, like basically they're like, you can take an aspirin. I think on the show, Chris Jericho said, like, you couldn't take an aspirin without them testing for it. But again, I mean, this just proves that that program was bullshit because
Yeah.
if they were testing him for it and they knew that that was happening, if it was so complete and thorough,
Yeah.
how did he have all these high levels of testosterone in his system?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a cover your ass. And I would be curious to see, like, how, if the WWE was ever investigated for, like, the use of testosterone. Because aren't steroids illegal?
They're illegal in sports, is generally how it is.
Okay.
So I don't think they're like illegal. Like I think they're supposed to be like a controlled substance, maybe.
Okay.
In sports, they're illegal because they're like an edge. So like baseball had a big thing about like
Right.
people using steroids.
Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong. Well, I think Lance Armstrong wasn't necessarily entirely steroids. It was like a weird like
Performance
blood.
enhancing.
Yeah, it was like he was like they were like giving him blood transfusions with like oxygen enriched blood. I think that was the Lance
He's a
Armstrong one.
fucking vampire.
Yeah, and it was like, and you're not supposed to do that. Like, it's one of
Mm.
those things. Steroids are frowned upon. They're definitely like, you don't want to give them to your kids, that type of stuff. But again, like, they have some medical, they're definitely used in the medical world. But I mean, there's also other drugs that have medical use that are illegal for normal people to have.
I mean, it's a
So,
controlled substance, like you said,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it might be a
So,
controlled substance. Right.
so how he got it and how the WWE boasted that they had this program to make sure everybody was on the up and up
Yeah.
this is bullshit.
No, I'm sure that, like, just this one time,
Somebody slipped through the cracks.
he was in a mental free fall, so he went and he got steroids this one time.
Yeah.
And that's why he has high levels of testosterone. Not that he's a repeat offender, repeat user. That's not at all. This is sarcasm. This is my sarcasm voice.
No,
For
I
those who
know.
don't know. You know. I'm
I
saying
know.
our listeners may or may not know. I mean, that's basically what the wellness program probably said. Like, oh no, we tested, and here's all our records, and the wellness program was probably bullshit. I mean, it's
Like I
total
said, I
CYA.
think
I
exactly.
mean,
Well, so the WWE, their face was pretty red after all of this happened, and more details emerged about the deaths, right? Like they had done this beautiful tribute to Chris, and I'm assuming Nancy was also included in there, because she was also a big part of the wrestling world.
you would think so.
After that, the WWE pretty much forbid anybody from mentioning Chris or the murders on any like interviews if they were being interviewed, if people were asking him about it. His name was like taboo after they found out what happened. They'd never mentioned him again on any of their programs.
Interesting.
Like they basically wanted to like cut any association that they'd ever had, but it's like you already put it out there. Like he was a big part of the wrestling world. Nancy was a big part of the wrestling world. And it also said on the program that they didn't reach out to Nancy or Chris's family to offer condolences or resources to help them during the process of grieving.
Yeah, because he only killed Daniel, right?
Yeah, so he had Chris had two other kids, a son and a daughter.
Oh yeah, son and daughter. Okay.
Yeah. So as such a tight knit community, they seem to want to really distance themselves from any negative press, which, like you mentioned last time, like there was already negative things that were associated with WWE. Like there were, what was it, Bret Hart that died?
Owen Hart.
Owen Hart. That's right. Bret was the more notable one.
Bret was the more notable one. Owen was definitely the lesser of the two, like the less famous.
Yeah.
Of the two, and he's the one that died like during a show.
Yep.
That one was like gnarly because it's like, yeah, drop down. I mean, like people do get seriously hurt on that.
Oh yeah.
Like, Mankind, Mick Foley, like they did like a Hell in a Cell match with him and Undertaker. That's like one of the most famous like matches of all time. And it's basically like a giant chain link fence or giant like metal fence thing like built around the ring. And the Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the top of it. And like he was like knocked out. Like they put him on a stretcher because he was like seriously hurt. And then like halfway while they had like reeled him away, like he like came to or whatever, was like, I gotta finish the show, and like kind of pushed the EMTs away, got off the stretcher. Like he talks about this in his book that I actually have because I was in the Army, and like Mick Foley wrote a book and Dwayne The Rock Johnson wrote a book, and I bought them both.
Yeah, for sure.
I have them, but yeah, it's like Mick he talks about like that was like his most famous match, like, and like him getting off the stretcher and going back was like what sealed it as like a lifetime, like not just like we fucked up and like hurt our wrestler. It was like, he came back in and like the match was like insane, like for ratings and stuff. And he got like hurt more, like it was a brutal thing. Like basically he was like bloodied, battered and everything like when he left.
Yeah.
Like his kids like were like watching. Like his wife and his kids were like watching and like I don't know, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
But
So I think
yeah, the
they're
WWE has some issues with like trying to toe the edgy line, but at the same time like going too far.
their credibility and their like care for their wrestlers is questionable at best, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know, and I know there's people that will argue, well, hey, these people signed up for it, and it's like, you know, people sign up for a lot of things, but you don't expect to be continually like concussed from your work. Like there's so safety protocols and OSHA and things like that for a reason.
Yeah.
Like I know that you are in a high risk situation and that that's because that's what you love to do, but there should also be safety precautions in place. And there shouldn't be people that are taking human growth steroids or testosterone that are giving them almost superhuman strength to do more damage because it is supposed to all be choreographed. Like it's not an actual fight, but these guys are just, you know, they're getting too big for their britches basically and they're
Well, they got to be able to lift, so right. It's like steroids helps you like lift and like gain muscle and stuff. You know, to be able to like lift a guy over your head. Sure, they're doing some of the work, like the guy you're lifting does some of the work, but like at the
yeah.
same time, you got to be strong enough. Like Hulk Hogan, so there was a famous Hulk Hogan body slamming Andre the Giant
Mhm.
at WrestleMania
Mhm.
was like a massive moment at the time, and basically like Hulk Hogan like tore multiple muscles in his back doing it because like even Andre the Giant like helping like basically the guy being lifted pushes off like your thighs or like your
Yeah.
shoulder to try to help take some of that weight off or basically put it on other muscles.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's still like Andre the Giant weighed so much more than the average wrestler that like yeah, like Hulk Hogan like tore muscles on his back. Like he basically body slammed him, had to pin him because Hulk Hogan was like legitimately hurt.
All I'm saying is like professional cheerleading, you have restrictions on what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Like maybe the WWE says, "Hey, you can't lift somebody and body slam them when they weigh 3 times as much as you." You know what I mean? I know it makes for a cool thing, but like, no, it's
But,
just ridiculous in my mind.
yeah, they have dudes that are like massive. Like Andre the Giant, you had Andre the Giant, you had the Big Show. He was like in the '90s and like early 2000s was like another like massively gigantic dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Big Show was like the second coming of Andre the Giant, basically. Like dude was huge.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you had people like body slamming, doing all kinds of crazy moves to him because it's basically like it's not just biggest guy wins.
It's not gonna hurt him though. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
So it just seems like very shitty to me the way that the WWE, because I know that, you know, their lawyers probably stepped in and said, "Hey, you can't mention his name, like you need to distance yourself." But at the same time, that was one of your own. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's really shitty. And on the documentary, it sounds like there was a representative from the WWE that showed up to Nancy's service and Daniel's service, and her sister's like, "Get the fuck out, you are not welcome here," you know, basically kind of thing. He's like, but he was the only one, and he was, I'm pretty sure, from the legal department, so they knew exactly the reason that he was going there was to try to like save face and avoid a
Yeah.
lawsuit potentially, is
Mhm.
would be my theory. Like maybe Nancy's family or Chris's family was going to sue the WWE because they failed to protect, you know, they had chances and they said that they were testing for this stuff and they weren't, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Did they? I guess that's a real interesting question because like this happened like mid 2000s, right?
2007.
2007, so
Mm-hmm.
like mid later 2000s, like people were definitely like suing people at that point, but like maybe like not to a heavy degree. Also, the WWE probably at that point had like fuck ton of lawyers.
Oh,
On,
I'm
like,
sure you'd have to in a field like that,
Yeah.
right? To get keep yourself from getting sued from people that get hurt, like your own wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this with other things like professions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like movie stars. We talked about it when like you hear about some movie star that was like, "Oh, I just wanted to kiss this person because I thought they were hot, so like I did it in the scene in the moment or whatever. And we're like,
Yeah.
but that's not supposed to happen because like you're both supposed to be professionals. Like
You
you're
have a
paid to
script.
act. You have a script. Like very similarly for like professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Like these people make like a lot of money. I mean,
Yeah.
like The Rock definitely makes way more money as a movie star than he did as a
Fair.
wrestler.
Fair.
But like, I seem to recall that like his WrestleMania match, like him and Stone Cold Steve Austin, like split like they basically each got like $500,000 for like doing that. It's like when you headline a big show, big pay-per-view, like it's the same as like boxing UFC fighters. Like the top people on the card get a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
for putting on the show.
Right.
You know, the WWE itself earns a lot of money. The
Mm-hmm.
promotions always seem to make sure they're getting paid.
Oh yeah.
Like they're taking the profits, the percentages on top after paying their people, right?
Right.
So, yeah, but I guess ultimately the point I was trying to make was like it's a profession. It's professional wrestling.
Right.
You know.
You expect certain protocols to be in place to like, and
Yeah.
especially when you're saying that you have this great program that you are using as a protocol for safety,
Yeah.
and it's shit. It was nothing. That was just a big CYA, like you said.
Well, it's right. So it's interesting. So it's like the WWE is if the WWE is using it as like CYA, like just to basically say, hey, we're doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like the other wrestlers who are professionals, like I think we talked about this last episode where like it's so choreographed, like you have to communicate.
Right.
You know what I mean? If one person is like literally like has roid rage or like is off mentally and they're not in the game, like they're not doing their part,
Mm-hmm.
like that's dangerous for both of them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like if you ever watch or if you watch any of the training stuff, it's all like controlled falling. It's like fake hits. Like you put your hand up, like
mm-hmm.
guy goes to kick you in the face. You put up your hand and it's kind of like your hand takes the brunt of it, but you're still getting impacted.
Right.
So like you would think that like the other wrestlers would have a lot to say about if somebody wasn't doing what they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I bet there's people that like knew like, oh yeah, that guy's on steroids. Like, yep, he's bypassing the drug tests or whatever somehow.
Yep.
Right.
And to be clear, we're not saying he was I'm sure there were several people in that organization that were doing that.
Yeah, it's
right.
I think I mean I'm not deep in any of the culture anymore, but I'm just gonna assume like steroids is a thing in wrestling.
Because if Chris is the only one that passed through the system, that's pretty odd. I think the reason it all came to a head was because of what happened after, like when Chris committed this terrible, terrible, terrible thing. It's pretty naive to think that Chris was the one wrestler that snuck through the system,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, shortly before the deaths, Chris had actually reached out to a former wrestler turned neuroscience named Christopher Nowinski. And Christopher was actually doing a study on chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, which is a condition that is a result of multiple head injuries. It is a progressive and fatal brain condition that is often seen in footballers, wrestlers, and other professionals that receive multiple concussions. And there have been several deaths and suicides associated with this disease for when it comes to professional sports.
Oh yeah.
And it's often likened to severe Alzheimer's or dementia. Now, sadly, Chris would never be treated before he died, but after his death, Nowinski reached out to Chris's parents to discuss his suspicions. So Chris's family gave them permission, and they actually did an autopsy of his brain.
Mm-hmm.
It was discovered that Chris had a severe case of CTE, and his brain resembled that of an 85-year-old dementia patient.
Wow.
Could this have caused him to act in a way he normally wouldn't have? Absolutely. That combined with the steroids. I mean, I think they said that there were like 4 professional footballers. Don't quote me on this, but there were like 4 professional footballers that that had either murdered people that were close to them or completed suicide. Um, and if you think about it, like, their brain is slowly decaying from the inside out, right? Because
Yeah.
of all the concussions and untreated, especially because the WWE, it sounds like they push so hard. Like, if you didn't go, you weren't getting paid and you were going to fall out of the limelight. So it was pretty much a very work, work, work culture, is for what it sounds like.
You have work, 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 and you also have one-upmanship
Right.
as
And
well.
you don't want to be the person like, oh, I'm fine. Like that guy, when you were saying the guy, what was his
Mick
name?
Foley.
Mick Foley.
Yeah.
Imagine what kind of damage he did to himself just by getting up after getting knocked out.
Yeah. Yeah, so have you ever watched the movie, the Concussion one with Will Smith? Where Will Smith plays like the brain doctor who's like kind of calls out the NFL for like CTE being a thing, and like he's basically like, we need to make changes right away because like pro football players are like literally giving themselves brain damage.
Right. No, I haven't seen that movie, but I could see it. So Chris Nowinski, who is the neuroscientist, he was a former wrestler, and he had seen firsthand what this was doing to people, and so he became a neuroscientist, which, like, good on you, Christopher.
Yeah. And I can't remember, I think I maybe dropped this at the very beginning of the last episode about Chris Benoit's finishing move was he would go up to the top ropes, like he'd knock out the guy would be laying on the ground. He would go up to the top ropes, the third rope, and jump and basically headbutt the guy. Like, so every night he's out there, or most every night he's out there, he's like basically like diving headfirst into somebody, like, as much as you're still like trying to like deflect the blow or deflect the force of that impact, like, yeah, you probably walked away like semi-concussed a number of times, right? Like, so it's very reasonable to me that his brain would be very badly damaged.
Well, in that documentary I watched as well, I cannot remember because it's been a few weeks now, because this is week 2 that we're doing this, but they talked about how it was basically a rite of passage, like having a chair smashed on your head. Like, that was a thing, right? Like, you tensed up and you took it, and I'm like, why? There is literally no point. Like, they were showing some of them, and it was like bending these metal folding chairs.
And so that was part of it. So the metal chairs are supposed to fold or bend. Like, they're supposed to be a little like,
not your standard folding chair.
Yeah, they're supposed to be slightly less denser.
But still getting smacked in the fucking head with a metal folding chair. Like, and they talked about how, like, you weren't a real wrestler basically until you did this. Like, it was a badge of honor to get your bell rung by a damn fucking folding chair. So terrible. And I mean, I know a lot of sports and professional, like, as a society, we're trying to get better about taking care of people and not doing things just for pure entertainment that are going to be detrimental to the health of people that are performing these stunts.
Yeah.
But we're not 100% there. We're not even, like, really. I mean, good on the NFL. I know that they've, like, upped their, like, concussion protocols and things like that. But it's just like, you have a small window that you play football, and you have a long window where you're alive. Or, you have a small window where you're wrestling, and you have a long window where you're alive. You need to focus more on the time that you're going to be alive, because if you keep doing this crazy shit that's going to hurt you, your rest of your life is just going to be not quality life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because once the damage is done, the damage is done. It's really hard to reverse brain damage.
Yes.
If at all it's possible. I'm not a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
I'm the farthest thing from it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, right, and like, pro footballers make like way more money than wrestlers do.
Oh, yeah, think, like, absolutely.
In any given year.
On any given Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, any given Sunday for sure.
Yeah. Drive off in a Hyundai.
No.
I know you like Kanye, so. Yeah. Well, you used to. You liked old Kanye stuff.
I thought Drive Off in a Hyundai was like a commercial.
No.
Not a song.
Any given Sunday, she drive off in a Hyundai. It's like, it's on Gold Digger.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
it's like something. God, it's been a long time since I heard that song, but see him on TV any given Sunday. Something something. She's driving the nice car, and basically he drive off in a Hyundai.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she rolling in the Benz, he driving a Honda. Okay, yeah. It's coming back to me. It's coming back to me. There's my CTE showing up.
To me.
No, I shouldn't joke about that.
I'm not a
It's
big,
not funny.
not a big Kanye fan.
I made a joke about having CTE. You're gonna have to delete that because that was fucking terrible.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, where was I going with that?
Pro footballers make a ton more money.
Pro footballers making a ton more money, but like, yeah, like it took like people like whistleblowers type shit to like finally get it out there that like this is happening. There's actually San Diego Chargers linebacker Junior Seau, pro footballer like most of his career. He was a linebacker. He was given the hits. He was the guy hitting other people.
Okay.
But it's so violent, or it was back then. Like they've changed a lot of like how to tackle and stuff like that to try to stop like leading with your helmet. But like he played like 15 years or something like that, and then like a pro footballer, like pro bowler, like every year. Not pro footballer, like pro bowler, like top of the game. Killed himself, shot himself in the chest, and purposefully shot himself in the chest and not the head so that he could donate his brain to CTE study.
Man.
Because he knew
what was
happening to his brain.
Man.
Like, and yeah, so like when you mentioned like them murdering other people or completing suicide, that happened. Like that is a very famous, like his suicide. I think in my mind, I credit that with like the real turn.
Yeah.
Because like this is a man, top of the field, well loved by lots of people.
And didn't want for anything.
Yeah.
But like we said, once you have that brain damage, you can't undo it.
Yeah.
And you're only gonna get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's maybe even more famous, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, famous boxer. One of the greatest of all time, like one of the greatest sportsmen of all time. That like when people talk about like goats and all that, like Muhammad Ali is at the top of a lot of people's list.
Oh yeah,
or was, maybe until Michael Jordan, right? But if you look like what happened to him like later in life, like yeah, he had like I don't know if it was genetic or if it was purely boxing that did that to him, but like he couldn't talk, he could like barely move around in his later life and stuff. Like yeah, it's kind of like Alzheimer's or whatever. Like it was bad. Like people would be like, oh, it's kind of hard to see him like that, because it's like they remember what a great athlete he was in his prime.
But
it's like
yeah, but at what cost, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's awful.
Yeah, I think the Rocky movies went into that, where like they, at the end of the one where he fights the Russian, like the very next movie, like they start the next movie with like at the end of the fight with the Russian and him like sitting in the locker room afterwards, like shaking because of like the brain damage that he's having, and so he's supposed to quit. He's supposed to quit boxing. I remember that from more just random knowledge in this brain of mine, So, totally believe Chris had CTE, all that stuff, like severe case probably, because the finishing move, some of the guys whose finishing move was like a submission or something, they were getting light off better.
Yeah.
We talked about the sensationalism of like hitting it with a chair. They go into this one on the wrestler, but yeah, in like the early to mid 2000s, cutting was like a massive like thing where like, so they'd hit a guy in the head with a chair and he'd like be down on the ground and like they would sneak in razor blades and they would cut their forehead because it would like bleed profusely, but like not like it
actually
would like
do damage.
Yeah, it wouldn't do much damage, but it would like bleed pretty bad, but like not like you weren't at risk of like you weren't at too bad of a risk of losing a lot of blood. It just looked sensational.
Yeah.
There,
That
there's
was like
like,
the video that I saw when I was watching that documentary. The guy got hit in the face, and it was like, I mean, it was like pouring out of his
yeah,
head. So now I'm questioning if that's what was really going on. I'm assuming
it's not from
it's probably the razor blade.
it's the razor blade. Yeah, like I bet if you go back, so there's a famous match with Stone Cold Steve Austin where he was just like bloodied, and I mean, again, back to professionalism. Like a lot of places, like they treat like blood is like a very like you have bloodborne
Oh
pathogens,
yeah.
like AIDS. AIDS was a thing at that time too. Like you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of like bloodborne diseases. Like the idea that it's like a biohazard for other people.
Right.
Like other people should not be coming into contact with your blood.
And especially not like sweating and fighting and getting themselves cut and also like
Oh
swapping
yeah,
blood, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like yeah, but they go into it on the wrestler because
Mm.
that's one of the thing where it's like oh he's like I gotta cut myself for this fight and like they talk about that in the movie the Mickey Rourke movie
Mm-hmm.
and yeah it's like all when they did that in the movie all I could think of was yeah Stone Cold Steve Austin and like blood pouring out. I think Mick Foley did it too. I think he might have talked about it in his movie. It was huge in like the early to mid 2000s. Like I said, one upsmanship, the sensationalism, like oh that guy was like busted open. You know, it's
Yeah.
like there was like they literally started like a hardcore heavy like hardcore championship in like the early to mid 2000s
Mm-hmm.
where it was like anything goes hit guys with two like barbed wire wrapped 2x4s. You'd
Jesus.
like pour out tacks and body slam guys onto tacks and the tacks would like stick into the back of the guy.
That sounds like more like a weird kink thing than anything.
Basically what happened was is like WWE was like taking off and it was like they were having to like one up WCW and then like at the same time there was this weird like extreme backyard wrestling with dudes just literally like wrecking themselves like normal guys wrecking themselves and like yeah like cutting themselves doing all this stuff
Mm-hmm.
and they saw it as like got to bring in that market we got to do that we got to do that too
Yeah.
and I don't think they I could be wrong but I don't think they do that shit anymore like I would hope by now they're like this is like in bad taste like let's come up with better ways to like run storylines or have like our competitors our professionals compete.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really hard to say what snapped in Chris's mind. To make him capable of even making that decision to murder his wife and his 7-year-old son.
Yeah,
I think WWE could have done a better job of taking care of their performers, like we've just been saying, if they had protocols in place to treat concussions and not push these people to just always be working.
yeah,
Maybe he could have had time to heal instead of just continually making it worse. And Chris did choose to take steroids, which could also have contributed to him committing this heinous act. And I'm not anyway trying to diminish his responsibility for his actions. It sounded like he just needed more help than what was available, and Nancy and Daniel ultimately paid the price. And regardless of the cause, Chris was responsible for the murder of his young child and wife. Or
yeah.
was he?
What or was he?
Or was
What kind of
he?
conspiracy stuff are you gonna throw out here now?
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the odd happenings that occurred regarding a Wikipedia update.
Okay.
According to multiple articles, some 14 hours before police discovered the bodies of the Benoit family, Chris's Wikipedia page was updated to report the death of Nancy. Now, let me say that again. 14 hours before the bodies were found, there was a post online that reported Nancy had died. Police traced the IP address back to a residence in Stamford, Connecticut. Now, fun fact, Stamford, Connecticut also happens to be where the WWE is headquartered. The
Okay.
post itself said Chris Benoit was replaced by Johnny Nitro for the ECW Championship match at Vengeance, as Benoit was not there due to personal issues stemming from the death of his wife Nancy. According to the police, they had identified the writer of the post and were working with Wikipedia Although I was never able to find a name of who wrote the post. Now, if you don't know Wikipedia, it's actually, you can go in and update it as
Yeah.
like a normal everyday individual can go in and update
Yeah.
Wikipedia posts.
Yeah, so anybody can go in and like change Wikipedia, which is why it's kind of like roughly a bad like you really can't
Not
trust
the
it.
most reliable source. You should definitely fact check if you find something on Wikipedia.
Yeah, but people do go in and like there are people who like straight up like when somebody changes something, they go in and fact check and be like, nope, that's not right, like and change it back or like
Yeah. So on ABC News, they reported that the post was marked by the website and removed less than an hour after it was posted. So, fact checking, right?
yeah.
So the person that wrote the entry on Wikipedia said that they had posted the rumor as fact. They had heard a rumor, but where the hell did the rumor come from? Right?
Yeah.
They also posted an apology and basically said the whole thing was just a really crazy coincidence. But I mean, come on.
She was dead at that time, though,
She was
right?
already dead, but nobody even knew that. I mean, the
Yeah.
police didn't even know. Chris's family, Nancy's family, nobody knew.
Yeah. Chris knew.
Chris knew.
If the IP would have been traced back to his house, like sure,
Yeah,
right?
but it wasn't because he was in Georgia
wasn't.
and this was in Connecticut.
Yeah. Is
So,
it possible that he was texting somebody else other than Chavo?
so he did actually text. There was another wrestler, and I can't remember his name, but it was the exact same text that Chavo was getting. It was
Okay.
somebody. So it wasn't anything outside of the norm. So they were in Stamford, Connecticut. They did say that they were in no way connected to the wrestling company, but maybe they knew somebody who was. Maybe they were trying to signal the police that there may have been something else going on.
Yeah.
There are rumblings in a few articles where people don't believe that Chris actually killed his family or himself, but he was actually another victim. Now, that could just be loyal fans who really don't want to believe that someone that they looked up to so much could have done something so evil.
Yeah.
But that, to me, like something that coincidental is hard to believe that there's not. For me, something like that is just such a weird coincidence on such a tragic thing, you know?
Yeah. My skeptical mind trying to go towards like the most logical conclusion. I don't think it would be outside the realm of possibility of like, right, like Chris is spiraling. Nancy's worried about her son, herself. Maybe she's got a friend, some based in wherever the WWE is based out of, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's interesting that they actually have the person who did the post. But let's say Nancy has set up a thing about, like, hey, I'm worried, like, Chris is going to do something. And, like, I'm going to check in with you. And if I don't check in with you, something bad may have happened.
But as a friend, don't you think that friend would,
Should do something
their
about
first
that?
priority would not be to update Chris Benoit's Wikipedia page?
Well, yeah.
Their first thing would probably be like, hey, I haven't heard from her. I'm going to call the police and have them go check on her.
Yeah.
I don't think any friend of them would be like, oh, hey, I'm going to call the police, but guess what? I think she's dead. And then have like their friend post it. To me, that just does not feel like, that doesn't feel
But maybe it would be like, so in my mind, it's like a degree of separation. So Nancy has a friend, and the friend is like, tells a random friend, hey, I haven't heard from my friend. I'm a little worried about it. And then that person is like, oh, I'm gonna go into Wikipedia. I don't know. It does seem sus.
That's fair. I mean, I could see that happening, but again, it all kind of it reeks of there's something different going on or something else that may be going on. They confirmed that this post was written 14 hours before the police found the bodies.
Yeah.
So regardless of timeline, like when they were found, this was confirmed to have been posted before anybody knew anything about any of that going on.
Yes. And then when did they air
the same day that they found the bodies.
Same day they found the bodies.
Yes.
Okay.
So they got that done real quick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
which fuels conspiracy theory type stuff, right?
I know. Sure. But sometimes conspiracy theories are right. Like, we're probably bugged now because we have the vaccine. That's me being sarcastic. You should definitely get vaccinated, people.
Pyramids were built by aliens or whatever.
Bigfoot's an alien. No. On the show The Dark Side of the Ring, Chavo Guerrero recalls a conversation that he had with Chris on Saturday, which would have been after Chris had already murdered Nancy. He said he sounded off, stressed, different. So Chavo received the text from Chris and Nancy's phone telling him where the dogs were, how they could get in the house, and the address. And there was also another wrestler who had received those texts. Chavo talked to Chris on the phone on Saturday.
Okay.
Could Chris have been under duress? Like, in his, people, to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Chavo said Chris seemed off. Chris was stressed. He sounded, he sounded different than what he normally did. Could Chris have been under duress? Maybe someone was at his house and telling him what to say. Chavo had initially called Chris, who didn't answer, but Chris immediately called back. Now, I'm not saying that this didn't happen the way that the police are saying. He could have been super stressed out and freaking out because he had murdered his wife and possibly had murdered his son also by this point. But the fact that the next communications from Chris were text could be arguable, right? Anybody can text from a phone.
Yeah.
Anyone can send a text. Anybody, if you don't have that voice recognition.
Yep.
And again, like I said, what if somebody was in Chris's house that was keeping, like, essentially a hostage situation, telling him what to say to Chavo? Now, this is just me playing conspiracy theory big, that's pretty far-fetched. But if you're going to look one way, like, oh, yeah, he was stressed out because he had just murdered his family. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe he was stressed out because there was somebody in his house that was, like, threatening Daniel. If Daniel was still alive, that's a bargaining chip, for lack of any good term at all.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily believe that. I really just don't like that Wikipedia update is.
Yeah.
I know there are coincidences, but that's a hell of a fucking coincidence.
Yeah.
But maybe Chris knew something that he shouldn't. Maybe he found out something then was going to expose a big secret that someone wanted to keep under wraps. It's impossible to know for sure. We do know that, it's generally accepted. We know it's generally accepted that Chris did, in fact, kill his wife and son and take his own life.
Yeah.
But that post makes me wonder if someone wasn't really trying to make a statement to, like, at least tip off police, like, hey, you guys should definitely look into this more. Now, and I'm not trying to take the blame away from Chris at all. Like, he obviously, it's super evident that he was struggling, and he could have just, as a result of the roids and the brain damage, he just was not in his right mind. His right mind just didn't exist anymore at this point.
Yeah. So here's the number one problem with that conspiracy theory is, like, by killing Chris and his family, like, what bigger thing was, like, Chris going to spill the beans on?
Well, we don't know because he died.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying is like, there would still be the other thing still out there, there'd be at least, like, conspiracy theories, like, oh, like, he was going to blow the whistle on, like, this or that, or, what I mean? Like, anybody who believes that would have tried to do some, like, investigation on, like, why would they be silencing Chris and his family?
That is fair.
And you would have a better story about why that conspiracy theory would exist, I think, than just, like, oh, there was this coincidental Wikipedia thing.
Yeah.
Especially because, like I said, like, according to the timeline, she was dead by that point. And so maybe somebody knew that and was like, he's not going to be at the show because he's grieving his dead wife, and, like, not knowing that he was the one that killed the wife. Like, somebody just knew. But part of this is, like, they know who posted it. So, like, so we can sit here and try to speculate all we want, but, like, you say, like, they know who the person is, and, like, they're like, oh, yeah, no, it's just, I don't know, I posted it, Like, so weird.
Yeah, agreed. So, yeah, that is the end of our coverage on the Benoit family tragedy. Like I said, it's sad that Nancy left a relationship due to abuse and then sadly encountered it in her next relationship, which unfortunately is not a uncommon thing. You know, the cycle of abuse, you tend to, once you're in it, it's easy to fall back into it, unfortunately. It's sad when it's a public figure that people really tend to look up to as well. When they do something like this, it's arguably more shocking because, you know, how many people did Chris inspire? How many girls did, like, you know, Nancy inspire to get into that realm? You know, it's really really hard when it's somebody that's so. It sounds like he was like very encouraging too. Like he was, a lot of people looked up to wrestlers or celebrities or, you know, singers, things like that. That's just, as a young kid, you tend to look up to people that you think are cool like that. And
Yeah.
then for him to turn around and do this, like, it's just, it just makes it so much worse, you know,
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah, you had mentioned that they found Bibles next to the other two, right? And Chris was religious, and you know, it's like some people get weird ideas, especially when you're in like a bad mental state like that, about like I'm gonna kill them to save them or something. You know, like I had that thought about like
Yeah.
the fact that he put the Bibles there and was, you know, and then it was like, you know, and then like the idea like that he's killing himself. You know, usually suicide is considered like you're not like most, I want to say, like religions or sects or whatever of Christianity. You know, it's like
If you complete suicide, you don't get into heaven.
yeah, it's like yeah,
That's
that's
I
definitely like
remember as a
a
kid
main thought. Yeah,
being taught that, like, you know,
yeah,
in my, when I grew up as a Pentecostal, like, you,
yeah,
if you completed suicide, you weren't going to get into heaven.
yeah. It was. I remember it was given as like as somebody who's like thought about theology, study, stuff like that, right? Like the the idea there being to like you're basically choosing to no longer live your life to God's will and you're taking that control and you're saying like I'm done. I don't have any use in this world. I have no like no redeeming qualities, like God can't use me anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like the idea is it's the one thing that like your last act is like defiance or like your will, not God's will. And so that's I think the main basis of saying it's like you know you can't be like oh you know like my sins are in the past, God forgave me, you know. It is one of those fallacies in my mind of like you know because people who are forgiven and saved in my mind, you know, like my or I'll say evangelical Christian ideas of being saved or like you know redeemed. It's like people still continue to sin, you know.
Yeah.
There's and so it's the idea like I personally think it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, so in my mind, there's almost no deal breakers with God about that. But that's
So,
a whole different story. But
can I interject?
yeah,
So, speaking of that, they looked at Chris's search history on his computer, and he
okay,
had looked up some Bible verse. I cannot remember it off the top of my head, that had to deal with like resurrection.
okay,
Um, so, and then they kind of tied that back to his son was potentially dealing with a illness. Was he, like you had said, was he trying to spare him from that life, thinking that, like, was he so far gone in his damage or episode or whatever caused this, that like he thought he could bring it back to life and he would be okay. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's easy to speculate what you think could have been going on, but nobody's ever going to know what actually was going on in his mind
yeah,
for him to do this. And because we are talking about suicide in this episode, I do want to tell everybody, like, if you're considering that or thinking about that, you matter. I know sometimes things seem hopeless, but just take it hour by hour, day by day, minute by minute, like second by second if you have to. Just keep trying, because there are things worth living for in this life, and we definitely don't want people to, idolize or ideate that suicide is a cure, because really it's just what's one of the quotes I saw was like, suicide takes the pain away from you and just transfers it to others, kind of thing, which I, as somebody who's had depression in their life, I've never really had suicidal ideation. um, Only because I'm so fucking stubborn. And when my dad would tell me I should kill myself, I'm like, haha, fuck you, I'm gonna stay alive.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I do know that there are people that deal with that, and there's so many reasons that somebody could feel like the only way anything is ever going to get better is if I'm not here. And
Yeah.
I want to make sure that everybody listening knows that that is not true. The world is a better place because you're in it. And just because you're not 100% right now doesn't mean that you don't have the capability. I can guarantee you, if you think that you don't have anybody in your life that cares about you, I guarantee you there are people in your life that care about you and want you around. If you have to go second by second, just keep pushing through, because you do matter. So
Yeah.
well, with that super bummer, yeah, I mean, this whole thing is a just super tragic end to a very tragic downfall, really. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole I feel like a lot of this could have potentially been avoided if there were just better protocols in place and better testing and just, better choices. Like, that's maybe just me wanting to think that there is a way to prevent something terrible, but sometimes, unfortunately, like we know, terrible things just happen, and they're gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm really hoping. So I've got some friends that are really into wrestling. Like I think a couple of guys I know had a podcast about wrestling. Like they would do like a weekly podcast and talk
Mm-hmm.
about wrestling. So I'm really interested in hearing from them.
Yeah.
Like they were like, "Ooh, gonna listen to the episode." They were kind of like, "Oh, you're gonna talk about wrestling?"
Yeah.
You know, I'm hoping that they can shed some light on like, did wrestling change protocols
I
based
would
on
be
this?
super curious about that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I would think you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would think you would have to change. Like,
I mean, just for like publicity's sake, you would have to, because people
yeah,
are gonna really be looking at you with a magnifying glass on how you're treating the people, so this doesn't happen again.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any information on did the families ever like sue the WWE
Not
or
that
try
I
to settle or something or like get some kind of compensation?
Not that I saw.
Okay,
I didn't. They didn't mention it in the TV show. I didn't see any articles about it. Um,
they might have NDAs
I
too.
was gonna say there is some of that, or there could be like, there was an ironclad contract where you couldn't sue them because they were, as performers, like your immediate family, whatever. I mean, it would be interesting to know if there was any of that was ever looked at. I didn't see anything in my research, but
Yeah, it'd be really interesting if every pro wrestler is waiving liability
mm-hmm.
to perform
I would
and make saying like I'm not going to sue WWE or the companies that to like promote them.
I would hope that the performers themselves would get a good lawyer, so they would have some legal repercussion if things were to go south, if things did happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are. I know some people think of those things as like shitty. It's like some people view some of those companies as like as sleazy as
Like
who are
porn
the
companies, honestly.
yeah, maybe porn companies. I was thinking more like the agents that like give like look for boy bands. You know what I mean? It was kind of the thought I had.
Mm,
Like you're not famous. Here's a contract to make you famous. Oh, by the way, like
you're not going to get rich, though, because we're going to
yeah,
get rich off of you.
exactly. It's more about like we're taking the vast majority of your profits.
Yeah.
You're getting what we say we'll pay you. Sure, it's more than you were getting before,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not what you're worth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, as always, thank you guys for listening. And don't forget to subscribe and download our show, as well as leaving us a rating, a review. 5 stars are always appreciated. Nice reviews are always appreciated. You can leave those on whatever platform you're listening on. And all of these help us become more visible to more people and help us grow our show. Also, please help us out by sharing us with your friends, family, social media, all the things. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Creepy Cascadia Pod. And you can also check out our website, which is creepycascadiapod.com, or you can shoot us an email to admin@creepycascadiapod.com. You can send us your own stories of ghost stories, encounters with serial killers or a murderer or a bank robber. If you find Sasquatch, I definitely want to know. Please send pics. Or if you have an idea for a show topic that you'd want us to cover, feel free to email us or, hit us up in our DMs.
Stay out of my wife's DMs.
Dims. DMs. And again, just remember, we are not going to have a new show this next week because we are going to be spending time with the family and not stressing ourselves out. So,
fair enough.
Yeah. But we hope everybody has a good week, and we will be back in, not next week, but the next week after that. So, happy hump day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.